Okay. Hello and welcome, everyone, to We Are All Macro Social Workers, presented as part of the NASW Student Events Series. We hope you enjoyed today's program, and we thank you again for joining us. If you haven't already, please put in your state where you're from and your LinkedIn profile so that everyone can connect and chat with you later. Today's session, as I mentioned, is part of our National Student Series, which happens every third Thursday of the month. It's between 6 and 7 p.m. And registration is always free for members and non-members. Just as a reminder, there are no CEs offered at today's webinar. Please make sure to keep your lines muted during the webinar. There will be opportunities to ask questions throughout the session. If you do have questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat or use the raise your hand feature and the moderators will assist. And at this time, I know that her camera is not working, but I'm going to introduce Francesca is an intern with NASW Wisconsin, and she will be introducing today's speaker.
Hi everyone, I apologize. My camera wants to act up today. But I'm going to introduce Kristi, our lovely presenter today. Kristi Wood is a fierce advocate for the social work profession and the people we serve. She has 30 years of experience in human services, residential treatment, group homes, and foster care environments. Kristi and her partner have fostered over 40 teen boys, helping them transition to adulthood. Kristi's foster daughter is now an LCSW. Kristi is a professor in the UW Whitewater Social Work Department. That's University of Wisconsin Whitewater Social Work Department, and also enjoys being a foster parent trainer. She has served for a total of 10 years on the NASW Wisconsin chapter and NASW national boards. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn the program over to you, Kristi, and you can begin.
Thank you so much, Francesca and Nadir. Thank you all so much for being here. What an amazing turnout. This is just so exciting to see you all from all over the country. Thank you for being here and also for being in our social work field. It is so important that you are part of social work. So I'm so excited that you are here today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you see my PowerPoint? Yay. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to talk all things macro social work tonight. I plan to talk for about 45 minutes or so, and that is to allow you time because I want to hear from you. I really believe that we all learn from each other. I am an educator, but I learn from my students every day, and I learn something every day in all areas of life. So I really want to hear from you after I give my little spiel. I'm very informal, so please feel free to ask any question. I believe that there is no such thing as a silly question, so please feel free. What are we going to talk about tonight? We are going to chat about how important it is for us to engage in advocacy efforts. It is actually embedded in our code of ethics, as you're probably aware. And I truly believe that advocacy is one of the most important parts of what social workers do. And sometimes I'll have students that say, I'm just going to do clinical work. That's micro, and I'm just going to do micro work. And we do need people to do that micro work. It's very, very important. But we also need all social workers to engage on a macro level to some extent. So I like to talk about little ways you can squeeze that into your career and your daily life. We're going to talk about all kinds of opportunities that exist for you at the state level, in your state, but also nationally, how you can engage. There are some really fun, awesome ways to get involved on a national scale within NASW. So I'm going to share some of those that I have engaged in. And I'll definitely talk about things that we've done in Wisconsin as well. And then we're going to talk about personal benefits to engaging in macro practice, because macro is important. Not only are you helping our profession and our communities as a whole and the people that we serve, but you are benefiting yourself. So I want to talk about ways that it benefits you to engage in macro practice, because as much as I want people to give to our profession, I want you to be able to get something in return, because that's what keeps us whole. That's what keeps us going. And then I like to say no blame, no shame. And I say that because sometimes we talk about like, oh, we should be doing this, we should be doing this. And I really don't want to talk about it as a should. I really want you to get excited about it and do it because you want to. And I don't ever want anyone to feel like they're not doing enough. We all have that little voice in the back of our head, and my voice is usually saying something like, I should be doing more, I should be doing more. Those are irrational thoughts. And so I like to talk about that because we don't ever want to feel like we aren't doing enough. We are doing the best we can. We just want to find ways to make the best use of our time, not just for ourselves, but for our profession and for everyone that we serve. I hope that you take away some type of little nugget from today's talk. You definitely do not have to do everything that is in this presentation, but if you take away one or two things, I will feel good in my heart. So take away what makes the most sense to you. All right, so a little bit about me before I start talking about macro social work. So I was one of those folks that got into social work a little bit late in my career, because when I went to get my bachelor's degree, the university that I attended did not have a social work program, but I ended up gravitating toward the closest thing, which was a degree in psychology. And I also got a human services emphasis. So I jumped right into the field. I was working with adults. I was a case manager for adults that had developmental disabilities and mental health issues. But then I started working with kids, and I really, really fell in love with working with kids. My first job working with kids was in a residential treatment setting. I was a coordinator for an emergency respite unit. And so I was working with kids that most of them were living at home, but just there were issues going on in the home. And either the child or the parents or both needed a break. So the child would come to respite to kind of keep the placement stable, make sure that they were able to continue to live at home. That is where I met my one and only foster daughter. She came to the program a couple of times, and I got to know her situation, realized that it wasn't making sense for her to live at home, wasn't safe for her. And she was 17. And so I stepped forward and said I would like to be her foster parent. And so this was an example of the importance of knowing about dual relationships. So since I worked at the facility she was going to, I needed to talk to my supervisor and make sure that she wouldn't come to the facility anymore while I was her foster parent, to avoid that dual relationship issue. But that wasn't a problem because she lived with me and it went great. She lived with me for a full year until she turned 18. And then we stayed in contact, and she is now not only a social worker, but she is a licensed clinical social worker. She has 4 beautiful children. She has done child welfare work all over the country, Oregon, Wisconsin, Alaska, Texas. She's currently in Alaska, helping their child welfare unit get cleaned up. So very, very proud of her. And I just love to talk about her because she's a great example of how you just never know when you're helping someone. Later down the road, you find out that you really had an impact on their life. So foster care is a big part of my life. After I had my foster daughter live with me, I had met my partner, Shannon, who's in the picture in the middle with me there. Um, we met in residential treatment working together. Then we became live-in group home parents together, still working with teens. And then we got our license as foster parents after that. So we were foster parents for teen boys for 16 years in Dane County, Wisconsin, so Madison area. Yeah. Um, and uh, and we adopted one of our foster sons. So he is now going to be 26. He's doing pretty good. And one of the greatest things I would say about being a foster parent is that people stay connected with you and they come back later and um it's just great to have those ongoing connections, and a lot of times they call us mom and dad, or at least look at us as family. So it was a big part of our life and a very meaningful part of our life. I went back to get my master's in social work while we were still foster parents. We had 4 teen boys in our home while I attended the UW-Madison part-time. I was in the very first cohort of the Madison part-time program. Took me 4 years of Saturdays, but I got my master's, and then I started teaching after that. I taught at Madison College, which is a technical college in Madison. And I currently teach at a UW, University of Wisconsin school, as Francesca mentioned, in Whitewater, which is kind of in between Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago, if you're familiar with the area. So I enjoy that very much. I also am a foster parent trainer, which Francesca also mentioned, for our state. So I love that piece. I co-facilitate trainings for people who have just become foster parents and help provide that ongoing training for them. But a big piece of my life is NASW and NASW Wisconsin. The executive director of our Wisconsin chapter, Mark Herstand, came to one of my classes when I first was in my master's program. And he talked about how important the work is that NASW does. And I was immediately drawn to that. I signed up right away, became a member, and started attending our state's annual conferences, and also joined a couple of committees, and then later on ran for our state board, which I stayed on for 7 years. And then we have a rule that you cannot serve more than 7 consecutive years. So I had to take a gap year and thought, gosh, what am I going to do now? And so then I applied to serve on the national board. So I got elected to that and have just finished my 3-year term on the national board. And I will talk a little bit about that later. What an amazing experience being on the state board and the national board have been. So that's just a little bit about me. Most of you are probably familiar with what macro social work is, but just to make sure that we all know, it can mean a lot of things, right? So it could be research. You could decide that you want to go maybe toward the academic side of our field. And it's very important that some of us do research, because we need to make sure that what we're doing is evidence-based, right? So that's a big piece of macro social work. And then also program development for communities. So important that new programs are being developed where there are gaps. If you've had a macro practice course in your academic journey, you've learned about needs assessments and how important it is to find gaps where there are, and fill those gaps with the resources that we need. So that's a big piece. Also, program evaluation. Someone needs to make sure that what agencies are providing is effective and is working for the people that are receiving those services. Community community-based education initiatives is also another important piece, as well as policy analysis. We need folks to really take a look at what bills are being proposed, what policies are in place, what is good about those policies, and what could be changed, what could be improved about those policies. And then also, of course, advocacy, which is a huge part of what we'll talk about tonight. We need leaders for nonprofit organizations. So important for many of you to think about, really think hard about being a leader for any number of organizations that serve people. We need social workers in leadership roles all throughout our community, whether you're thinking about your neighborhood, your town, your city, your county. We need leaders in those positions. And what better people to be in those positions than social workers, right? Because we are thinking about what is best for the people that live in those communities. And then lastly, organizational development. We need to create new agencies if there are gaps in those areas. So those are just some of the many pieces of macro social work. All right, so you are probably familiar, hopefully familiar with NASW's Code of Ethics, but how often do we really sit down and read through it? I really have my students read through it pretty carefully because there's a lot of good stuff in that code, and it gets updated every couple of years. Every 2 to 3 years, NASW has a committee that makes sure that it stays up to date, because our world is always changing, right? There's so much in our world that gets changed, and we see change happen, so we need to change with those times. And so you're probably aware that the code was updated in 2021, and there was a lot of language added that included self-care, which is so important. So now we officially have self-care language in our code, which means you are now required to take care of yourselves. And there was also language about technology that was added to our code, because there's so many things that change in terms of technology, right? In our work and in our communities. A big piece of our code is social justice. That is one of our core 6 principles of our code. And if you really look at the language here, we really need to think about striving to ensure that the people we serve have the information that they need. If you think about a bill that's being proposed in your state or federally, and you think about how that bill would impact the people that we serve or our profession or both, what better people to bring to that public hearing about that bill being proposed than the people that we serve, right? Bringing our consumers, our clients to a public hearing, or at least informing them about it, because their voices are so important, and they can make the difference between a bill passing or not. And I will share some examples about that in a little bit. And then just equality of opportunity. How important is it for us to make sure that everyone has equity and equal opportunity in so many areas of our lives? And then the integrity of the profession, things like providing a legislative testimony when a bill is being proposed. It's a great way, if you get involved on the state level at your chapter of NASW, you can go with your chapter and other members of your chapter to a public hearing and give actual legislative testimony that's evidence-based. You've done your research, and you can really educate our legislators about, this is the bill being proposed, but this is how it's going to impact us as a profession, and this is how it's going to impact the people that we serve. So very important that we are involved on a legislative level, and also participating in your own professional organization. That's right in the code, to be engaged either with NASW or a similar organization. But I'm a little bit biased, but I would say get involved in NASW. We are the largest social work organization in the country, and we can really provide a lot, especially when we are all actively engaged. So personal benefits, how can you benefit from being involved on a macro level? You are not only promoting positive change for our profession and the people we serve, which can give you a really great feeling of accomplishment on a macro level, but you're also really expanding your skill base and strengthening your skills. I turned 40 while I was in my master's program. So I was still, I was, a middle-aged person, but I still got very nervous. The very first time that I went to one of our state's advocacy days, I had this little voice in the back of my head saying, "You don't know what you're doing. What are you going to say? You're going to sound silly." So you always have to ignore that little voice in the back of your head and collaborate with other people, and you'll realize that you know more than you think, and your voice is very, very important. So just examples of that. I'll give you lots of examples of how to get involved. But getting involved definitely gives you more skills, gives you more confidence, and really can help you not only help others and help our profession and help our communities, but you will learn that you can be a mentor for other people and share your enthusiasm and share your excitement and get other people actively engaged. Your efforts get noticed, which feels really good. You might not be going into it, strictly for that benefit, but it does feel really good when somebody reaches out to you and says, "Oh, wow, I noticed that you went to that public hearing. Thank you for raising your voice." Those little things can go a long way in re-energizing you and wanting you to keep going, keep on keeping on. And then I like to talk about collective care because sometimes we talk about self-care, and being engaged really is self-care. When you are with fellow social workers, it's a really good feeling, and you get energized and re-energized. But also collectively, we are taking care of ourselves when we are actively engaged, because like I like to give the example of my state's annual conference, which is coming up next month in Milwaukee. And I look forward to it every year. It's such a great time where there are hundreds of us, hundreds of social workers all together in the same room. And the energy is really positive and really contagious. And I feel like everybody I talk to takes that away. And it just re-energizes all of us to go back and do the day-to-day work that we do. So it really is collective care to get together and be involved in a lot of different aspects of our career. All right, so some examples of why macro work is so important. So in Wisconsin, we're not alone. We're not the only state that's been bombarded with legislation that can really hurt the people that we serve and really hurt our profession. But back in 2015, this is an example of some legislation that started to be proposed, where we really started to see attacks on certain populations that we serve. So in this case, the LGBTQ community, there were a lot of pieces of legislation that were being proposed, and they got nicknamed bathroom bills, the first couple of them that came out. In 2015, there was one introduced that basically would force kids going to public school to use the bathroom that is, that aligns with their biological sex and not their gender identity. And the first one that got proposed in 2015, there was a public hearing on the bill because it was about to go to the floor. It had gone through committee already. And so there was a great turnout from a lot of people in the Madison community and all throughout Wisconsin for that specific bill. And I really believe that it really came down to the testimony of a lot of the kids that came to that hearing with their parents and just talked about how negatively that bill would impact their lives if they were forced to use the bathroom that did not align with their gender identity and how unsafe that could be for them. That bill did end up getting struck down. So that was a huge win for the LGBTQ community and for NASW Wisconsin. But it didn't stop there. You know, I'm sure you're seeing it in a lot of your states that you know, legislation is continuing to be proposed that can really be really harmful to the LGBTQ community, to people with disabilities, you know, to so many people that we serve. So we have to keep going. We can't stop. We have to keep our ear to the ground. And one huge benefit of being involved with your state chapter and nationally with NASW is they do a lot of the homework for us. We have amazing interns at all of our state chapters that really keep an eye out for legislation that's being proposed. And we have committees that I'll talk about later that address those bills, and we endorse them or we strike them down, or we refuse to support them. So it's a great way to get involved without having to do all that homework yourself. You can stay involved and you can contact your legislators. So I have here at the bottom in 2023 that a federal judge blocked a school district from requiring transgender students to use bathrooms that match their sex assigned at birth. So that was another win. But you know, we have to stay vigilant because these bills are going to continue to be proposed, and we have to continue to advocate for people that are being targeted legislatively. Another example of how NASW fights for us is what we are calling the Social Work Licensing Compact. And this is a very, very important issue in our profession. It would mean that all of the states that join the compact, and we have to join by passing legislation in each state, all the states that join the compact, people will be allowed, once they receive a certificate or a license in their state, they would then be able to move to a different state. And as long as that state is part of the compact, their license or certification will automatically transfer. This is a huge issue for anyone who works on a border to another state. So a big example in Wisconsin is we have a lot of folks that live in Minnesota, right across the border. In the Minneapolis area and also La Crosse area, where they have clients that maybe live 5 miles away, but they're in a different state. And so I know a lot of you have similar situations where you might be wanting to serve clients that live very close by, but are actually live in a different state. This would alleviate a lot of the headaches involved with workers needing to transfer their license to another state or get licensed in another state. At UW-Whitewater, we have a faculty who came to work with us a few years back from, she had gotten her license in Indiana. And she came and started working, and her partner also started working. They both had licensed clinical licenses, and her partner had to wait almost 8 months for her license to get transferred. And for some folks, that can mean the difference between getting a paycheck or not. And so in her case, that was the case. And so Mark, our executive director from NASW Wisconsin, was a huge advocate for them, and he really helped raise the voices to get that license transferred. But you know, if Wisconsin's able to join this compact, which so far we haven't been, successful, but we're still keeping at it. If we're able to join, then we will be able to, anybody who's licensed or certified in our state would be able to work in the other states that are in the compact. And this is huge for providing telehealth services, which, you know, a lot of our clinical workers can do and do. So this is a really important example of how our association fights for us. So far, 22 states have passed legislation. Each state has to pass its own legislation, which is why some states have been able to pass it and some not yet. But as you can see here, we are working, NASW is working very hard to make this a national priority and get it passed everywhere. Another issue that I'm sure you are very aware of is reproductive rights. Basically all freedoms. NASW works very hard on a all state chapter level as well as national level to ensure that as many people vote as possible. If that's one takeaway you get from tonight, is to make sure that you vote on November 4th and bring at least 3 people to the polls with you. NASW is working very hard to get those messages out and to help people find out where to register and what will be on their ballot, because every ballot's different. We also work very hard to condemn all forms of hate on a chapter level as well as nationally. And NASW has put out a public statement urging Israel and Hamas to reach a peace deal. That's obviously a big example in the news that is very important that we advocate for peace. And then things like affordable housing. If you think about how many important things in your life are human rights that you consider to be human rights, housing is definitely one of those. Affordable housing. So NASW works on these issues as well as many more. These are just some examples. So what are some benefits of being a member? Some of you may be on this call that are not members of NASW, and that's okay. We want you to be involved as much as possible, but wanted to relay some of the many, many benefits of being a member. I would say the first one is, first and foremost, is collegiality. It is so important for you to be connected with other social work students, colleagues, professionals that are doing the work that you want to do. It's great to make those connections. It can mean making the difference between getting the job that you want, or getting connected with other networking resources. And of course, a huge benefit of becoming a member is that you not only become a member of your chapter, but also nationally. You are invited to participate in so many events, activities, conferences. There are many, many resources available to you. There's an amazing research library available to you on the national level, as well as your chapter probably has fantastic resources as well. On the national level, we have specialty practice sections that you can also join and be invited to events in those, as well as have access to special articles that get written about different areas of practice within social work. And then also legally, you have access at your chapter level as well as nationally. If you need any legal consult at all, as you know, ethical situations can come up a lot in our profession, and you can get confidential consults at your chapter as well as nationally on those ethical issues that come up. And then, of course, advocacy. This is a picture here of some social workers meeting at the U.S. Capitol. There are many, many events where you can get involved. at your state level as well as nationally, and I will mention some of those in a minute. We are also a huge champion for student loan debt relief at state level as well as national. We've On the national level, we've had ongoing communications with the Department of Education. They look to us for responses and for statements. And so we provide those at the national level. We've signed on to a coalition that protects student borrowers. So we've made a lot of progress in terms of being the voice of all social workers and letting the Department of Education know how incredibly important this issue is for you all. As you're aware, especially when you first get into the field, some of the jobs that are very important do not always get paid very well. And so very, very important for us to advocate for ourselves on this issue, that the debt can really be a barrier for a lot of us. I still have student loans that I'm paying off for my master's degree. So I have been a big advocate for this issue as well. All right, I just put this picture in here because I think it's so beautiful. But I want to talk about some opportunities that you can get, how you can get involved. Okay, so if you only take away one thing from this talk tonight, I hope that it is getting involved in alerting your legislators about issues that impact us. So this is probably the quickest and easiest way for you to get involved. It is also, I would say, the least nerve-wracking because you can usually contact your legislator by email. If you want, you can give them a phone call, which can also be impactful. But this is a very quick and easy way to contact your legislators. NASW makes it very easy because for our chapter in Wisconsin, we also have these action alerts that you can sign up to receive by email. But you can also do it nationally through NASW. You will get contacted when there is a legislative alert, and it automatically puts your contact information in to the message and has it all written out for you already. So usually it just takes a few clicks and there you go. You've contacted your US representative, US senator from your area, and they really do listen to us. You will get a response most of the time. And they do take our input very seriously because we are a strong lobbying group at the national level. Legislators are aware of who NASW is, and we go to the Capitol as a group several times a year, which you can get involved in if you would like to. And also going to your state capitol is very, very important as well. So in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin chapter, we have several committees, which I'll just share as examples. And I really, really encourage, I know a lot of you attending tonight are from different states. I really, really encourage you to reach out to your chapter if you are not already involved, because your chapter most likely also has many committees that you can get involved in. You can decide which ones appeal the most to you. I started out only being on one committee, the Legislative and Social Policy Committee for our Wisconsin chapter. And I found it very, very interesting because our committee would go through the bills that are being proposed in our state and target the ones that impact our work and the people we serve. And we would decide to either support or oppose the bill, or get more information if we needed it. But it was an important committee because our committee would basically decide for our chapter what we were going to support or oppose. And that was, those were statements that would go public, and the people writing the bill would find out about it, that we were either supporting or opposing their work. And that can be very impactful. That can make the make or break a bill that's being proposed. Oftentimes the committees at the chapter level do not take a lot of time for you to stay involved. The committee that I just gave in as an example only meets once a month through the legislative session, so it does not meet in the summer, and the meetings are all virtual and they only take about an hour per month. So if you really think about you might be thinking, I don't have any extra time. But if you really break down your schedule, usually you can find an hour a month to get involved, and it's a really great way to do that. Here are just some examples of the committees that are involved or that are offered in the Wisconsin chapter. So I really recommend that you check out the committees that your chapter offers. They're most likely similar to these. So definitely check those out. And then if you go to your state chapter's website, you'll probably be able to find a lot of information about legislative and social policy, not just at your state, your chapter level, but also nationally at NASW. And the NASW national website also has a lot of information about issues that they are working on. Our Wisconsin chapter also has some caucuses and some task forces that our members can get involved in. And we've come up with some really great ones. We have a Pride Caucus. We have a clinical network for everyone who has their clinical license. We have a Young Leaders Network. And then we have task force on children's issues, social work jobs and salaries. And then we have a healthcare network, as well as a rural mental health committee. So your chapter may have very similar committees. So I really recommend checking those out at your chapter. And then I believe most chapters, if not all of them, have something either called an advocacy day. I think some of your states call it LEAD, where it's legislative education and advocacy. But typically it's offered Wisconsin offers it every 2 years. I believe maybe some states offer it every year. Wisconsin offers it every two because we have it coincide with the budget that comes out every 2 years in Wisconsin. And this was the event that I attended while I was a master's student. I was incredibly nervous about it. But we get together and we spend the entire morning learning about some topics that are pertinent in our state at the time. And then we fully prepare everyone. We have appointments that are already set up for the afternoon, and you go and you meet with your legislators from where you live. So your district representative and your senator. And we provide you with all of the talking points and all the information that you need. So there's no need for you to be nervous. It's a great opportunity to get your feet wet. Just talking to your legislators. They are human beings, and they really do appreciate hearing from us. Oftentimes they own a business or work a job, and being a legislator is kind of like their part-time job, and they really don't have the time to fully learn about how proposed legislation might impact their constituents. And so they really like to hear from us. So really encourage you to get involved. In Wisconsin, we will be going again in April of 2025. So make sure you check with your chapter to see when your next one is. And then I really, really want you to consider thinking about serving on the board for your chapter. This is the opportunity that I feel really opened my eyes to all the ways that we can serve on a macro level. I started out on our state board, chapter board, as a representative from my area. And then I served as secretary, and then president-elect and president. So really recommend, really opens your eyes to all the issues that impact social workers and your whole chapter. Um, and there are oftentimes many different ways to serve, especially as a student. We have, at least at the Wisconsin chapter, we have spots specifically for students to join our board. We have one at the bachelor level and the master's level. So be sure to check out your state and see what they offer for you to opportunities for you to get involved. And then nationally, we also have spots on our national board for students. Look at this beautiful, diverse picture here of the board that I served on. This was taken about a year ago. And, people from all walks of life, all ages, and all different areas of our country serving on our national board. We have a student at the BSW level as well as master's level again, and just an incredible way to get to know kind of the functionings of a not-for-profit and serving on a board and all the intricacies and ins and outs of that, but also really getting to know our organization and how much NASW does to serve social workers and serve our profession and be advocates and champions for our profession. So really recommend that you check that out, that opportunity out as well. And then I mentioned the specialty practice sections. There are many of them. So you can kind of pick what interests you. And as I mentioned, becoming a member of these sections gives you access to special articles, events, and a lot of other good nuggets. I served on the section for child welfare for a while, a couple of years. If you do want to serve on one of these sections, then you would actually write articles for everyone who is a member of the section. So it's really good opportunity not just to be a member of the section, but you could also serve on one of the committees for these. And then we have so your chapter has an annual conference. I mentioned that our Wisconsin one is coming up in October, and it'll be our 50th year conference. And then nationally, we have a national conference. So it used to be offered only in Washington, D.C., which was was great because we could all go to the Capitol together and meet with our legislators, our U.S. legislators. But we also we really really listen to our entire organization, and we really want to cater to people's feedback about that. And sometimes it's very hard for people to get away and to travel all the way to Washington, D.C. So we are now offering our national conferences at different venues all over the country. So it's going to be very exciting. We'll be meeting in Chicago next summer. So I really recommend that you block off. It's usually the third week in June that the conference is offered, and next summer it will be in Chicago. So there are significantly reduced registration rates for students. So really encourage you to think about making a trip out of it, going with your friends or going with your department if you're still a student. Can be a wonderful learning opportunity. There are amazing workshops you can go to, and you can choose which workshops you want to go to.
Kristi, really quickly on the topic of conferences, I just wanted to add, many chapters offer virtual conferences or reduced rates for members. So I think that's something worth keeping in mind.
Definitely. Thank you for that. What if you are not a member? I do know there are barriers to that. I hear that from a lot of my students when I encourage them to be members. it costs money, right? But the big benefit of becoming a member while you are a student is that it's a significantly reduced rate. It comes out to about $5 a month to when you first become a member. So I encourage people to, if you are getting close to graduation, that you ask for a membership as a graduation gift, because that's a great way to at least get your first year paid for. Also, if you have a social work job, I really encourage you to talk to your employer. Some of our employers in the field do provide a stipend or sometimes cover the cost of membership, and so do some of our schools of social work all over the country. So if your school does not help you with that piece, I really encourage you to speak up about that, because we've had more and more schools come out and reach out to us and let us know that they are trying to at least contribute toward that, so that more and more of our students can be members. We also are listening to our members in terms of, making it a little bit easier to pay when they do have to pay their annual dues. There's an auto renewal program now that makes it a little bit easier. And then we are even talking at a national level about trying to kind of make it like some other memberships where it could be withdrawn monthly from your checking account. If you have like a membership to public radio or public television, something like that, that's something that they do. So we are looking into that as well. We're always looking for easier for our members. I do have a couple links to some videos here, but I'm going to just share my PowerPoint with everyone. And if you ever want to go back, you can take a look at these. I just have a quick 3-minute one about a video from the New Jersey chapter, just because it was a really well done video and just very full of positive energy about why it's great to be a member of NASW. And then our beloved former president of NASW, Mick Joyner, who we lost last, I guess that was a year ago. I have a video of her because she was such an inspiration to me, to keep involved and keep advocating for our profession. So I have a video of her in here. And I'm going to open it up to questions because I want to hear from you all.
So at this time, everyone, feel free to type your questions in the chat. I know that we asked for some prepared, or if you had questions before this, so I'm going to read one of them. How to transition from macro or from micro to macro work, and how does, they're asking for advice on how to make that transition. They're also asking, how do you sell yourself as a macro worker with only micro experience? So that's one question.
A great question. Yeah, that's kind of two questions. So I guess to start out, I would say that all these little ways that we talked about just now to get involved, you can add a lot of that work to your resume. There are different ways to kind of format your resume, and in teaching, we kind of frame our resume more as like a curriculum of vitae, if you've seen those, where they're kind of listed, the classes that you've taught and articles you've written and presentations you've done, workshops you've done. So you can kind of do that with your resume and just list some accomplishments that you've participated in. And I really encourage you to list things like attending your chapter's advocacy day, reaching out to your legislators. There's, creative ways to kind of incorporate some of that into your resume. Let's see. And I guess the transition between micro to macro would come with that piece of basically marketing the work that you've done. Don't be afraid to, especially in interviews when you're interviewing for a job, don't be afraid to mention, even if it's something on a volunteer level. A lot of times employers want to know about volunteer work that you've done, because that shows that you care about the profession and you're involved, outside of work. I think that's really important. So I hope that answers your question.
And I saw this question about, I'm from Alaska. They don't have a lot of opportunities, and what are some ways to collaborate or create committees and groups? And that obviously each chapter has their own process, so I'm not going to go through all 55 chapters and explain that, but I would recommend reaching out to them. I believe Alaska is a great example of they partner with other like-minded groups, just like we do here in Wisconsin. So that's probably a way to go there. I would just recommend reaching out to the chapter. And then there's two questions here, so I'm going to read the first one I see. What are some careers that combine macro social work and the arts? That was also a pre-submitted question. So
Let me touch on the Alaska piece first. Just a little takeaway. The current national president of NASW is from Alaska. So if you want to reach out to her, because I believe she's still teaching at, I forget which university it is. It might be Fairbanks. I could be wrong, but I know we do have some very active folks from Alaska at the national level in NASW. I'm sorry, Nadir, could you repeat the question you just said?
this person asked, how do you use macro work and in the arts? And their examples are including poetry, painting, dance.
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I think a great way to kind of blend the arts and social work is to we can bring advocacy into the arts, I think. I actually have a student that's really thinking about ways, they're going into a master's program, and they're really thinking about ways to blend the arts with social work. And so, yeah, I think educating the public about issues that we work on in social work, and weaving that in to the arts is a great way to educate people and really get them thinking. Um, yeah, I'd be really curious to see what, because social work programs are evolving all the time and coming up with new um emphases and tracks that you can do, especially at the master's level. So yeah, I'm curious myself to see kind of how we can evolve in that area. Great question.
Um, okay, and this person has a specific question, but I'm gonna go ahead and, no, it's so hard. I'm gonna actually ask you a broader question. What are ways and channels that people can approach systemic injustice and issues? And their example is about law enforcement and the court system, uh, women being denied orders of protection. But I think I saw this in the pre-questions. People wanted to know, how do I find out more about the issues I care about and the ways of addressing it?
Yeah. So one of the pieces of my work that I enjoy really tremendously is I work with students that are at the fourth year level in their bachelor's program. And so I place them in their internships right before graduation. And so a lot of agencies that where we place students touch on a lot of the areas that you mentioned, the justice system, criminal justice, legal system, advocacy for people who have been in interpersonal violence. We place students in a lot of those agencies. So I think being an advocate for yourself, if you haven't done your internship yet or you have one coming up, being an advocate for yourself and getting an internship in the area that really, really interests you. And then after graduation, um, staying in touch with a lot of the people that you've made connections with. Because one thing that I found is a lot of the agencies where we do place social work students, not everybody that works there is a social worker. They might have they might have a background in a different area, psychology, sociology, criminal justice. And so they don't always have that social work lens, that social work perspective that we have. And so I think not only can we continually educate ourselves, but also work with our colleagues and our coworkers to really open other people's eyes about ethical situations and advocacy. The advocacy piece is so important. Um, but yeah, honestly, going back to being a member of your state of your NASW chapter and being a member of NASW is a great way to stay aware of issues that are happening and work that's being done and ways that you can get involved. I think it's just the quickest and easiest way to stay involved because NASW is doing so much work behind the scenes, doing all that homework for us so that we can get an update and find out what's happening and how can we get involved. So really, really go back to that.
Thank you so much. That was my question. Yeah.
And then I saw this question. Dwayne did a great job of answering it, so I'm going to read the question and his answer and see if you have anything else you want to add. What should you do if you don't know a lot about the legislative process, or policy, but want to get more involved? And he says, I would highly recommend connecting with a political campaign that resonates with you between now and November. So many campaigns are offering free training, simple ways to get engaged. There's like postcard writing, social media, phone banking. It's not quite as simple, but right, there's door knocking. And they're also giving great tips on how to connect with those that you know, because you are the most trusted source is the person you know. Anyway, how else would you answer that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, my own work as an educator. I just make sure that I'm constantly talking about voting in all of my classes, and I actually give out extra credit to my students to vote. And I encourage them to bring people with them to the polls. So just having those discussions with people around you, family, friends, and we don't always know which way someone's going to vote, but it's all about giving them the information that they need, making sure they have accurate information. Just, you might not even think of that as formal kind of advocacy work, but it really is, just educating people about, this is really what the issue is, and this is how it's going to impact people. That policy piece, just so important. So yes, finding ways to help educate others about just getting to the polls, getting registered, and then just giving them accurate information about what is going to be on the ballot. Sometimes there are confusing questions on the ballot, and they can be hard to figure out and hard to decipher. So just giving them accurate information. This is what it would mean to vote yes or no on a referendum, or to vote for this candidate or for that candidate. Social work is political. I know it gets tough, it gets hard to talk about sometimes, but it is so important that we give people information. You can frame it as this is the policy that would hurt people. This is a policy that would benefit people. It doesn't have to be one party versus another. You can look at the specific issues and talk about it that way, and talk about what will benefit people and what would hurt people.
Yeah. Oh, something I would also add about a lot of the legislative issues, a lot of chapters will share things on social media. So that's a great way to get involved and learn more as well.
Yes,
How
yes.
do you sell yourself as a macro social worker in a world that doesn't understand the work we do, or people think we're just therapists, we're just the micro level?
Yeah, I come across that so much. People hear the word social worker and all those stigmas come up, like, oh, you take people's kids away. No, we have to educate people about what social workers do. I think all the chapters really work hard on that, educating the public about all the different roles that social workers have, all the different environments we work in. So it's really sometimes it's just like public service announcements, like this is what a social worker does. And just having those conversations with people and breaking down some of that stigma and some of those myths about what we do and why it's so important. And it can just be as simple as having a conversation about, oh, someone is in the hospital. Oh, do they have a social worker helping them transition home? A lot of times people don't really understand, like, what, like, oh, I thought nurses did that. No, we need social workers everywhere. And just talking about things like, how much we need social workers in libraries, just having discussions with people about, what that would mean and how helpful our services can be for people. And then in terms of just, if there's a job that you want, if it's more macro work, um, you know, just marketing yourself and not being afraid to talk about, kind of like I mentioned before, if you don't think of it as something that's a skill, but it's definitely experience that you had, don't be afraid to talk about that. Just going to advocacy day, talking to legislators, that's something that you can mention in a job interview. Those are skills that you are practicing. So
By the way, going back to a question earlier about how to learn more, Dwayne wanted me to say that most chapters will allow students to listen in or join the legislative committees, where you can hear local issues and social work strategies. And then I wanted to ask you the question, for a recent graduate or soon to be recent graduate with limited social work experience, but a strong interest in macro level advocacy, what kinds of internships, fellowships, or entry-level roles would you recommend to gain relevant experience and build a stronger foundation?
that's such a great question. I place students in internships, and one of the first places that I think of is our state chapter of NASW Wisconsin. I have a lot of my students go and do their internship at NASW Wisconsin, and I've never had a student come back and tell me that they didn't like it. It's such a wonderful, broad experience, where you get to learn about the legislative side, but also advocating for social workers in different ways and supporting social workers all across our state, and providing resources to them, answering their questions, just being there, supporting them, being a collective unit of social workers is so important. And then just providing things like our annual conference, our webinars, events that we hold across the state. I mentioned collective care is such an important piece of, a lot of times it can be really tough work that we do in our field, and it can be draining, it can be emotionally exhausting, and we don't want people to burn out. And so we offer multiple opportunities for people to engage with each other and support each other, and be networks for each other. So that's the first place that I send my students for internships. But also there are other organizations that we send folks to, a lot of other not-for-profits, advocacy organizations, like NAMI, National Association for Mental Illness. I'm trying to think of some more. For LGBTQ advocacy, sometimes we send students, if that's their area of interest. So really any other advocacy organization or not-for-profit would be a great place to do an internship if you're leaning the macro way in your career.
Yeah, I can add a few more examples. I know that sometimes it's been United Way has been
Yeah.
a great place where people have been sent, or I know Milwaukee has someone that's in the state legislature, Anyway, you know what I'm saying, and county level government. So those are some great examples. One recommendation I would have is if you're really interested in macro social work is making sure you share that with your field advisor, especially as they're placing you. You know, it can be hard sometimes to find a macro social work placement, but you know, you have to ask, right? So
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier, at least for me in my work in placing students in agencies, is the requirements. We have to have someone with a social work degree that can supervise you in your internship. And that can be tough because not everybody that works at an advocacy organization has a social work degree. So that's maybe one barrier that we come across, but that doesn't mean it can't happen.
another question that was pre-submitted, I feel like a talk show host, which the interns on the call know I love the idea of being a talk show host, is should I start my advocating through my local legislator, even if it's a statewide issue, or should it be best to reach out to senators or House members? So
Oh, great question. So I would say all of the above. Reach out to everyone. If it is a state issue, make sure you reach out to your assembly person and your senator from your district. And there should be a way, in Wisconsin, there's a website where you can go on and type in your address and find out who your representatives are. So check that out in your state. There should be a similar way for you to do that. And you might even be able to just email them directly that way. But also check with your NASW chapter because they will be very helpful in helping you reach out to your legislators. And then, yes, if it is an issue that affects more than just your state or it affects your whole state, definitely also reach out to your U.S. representatives and your U.S. senator. They also will want to hear from you, especially if you've done your research and you know how an issue is going to impact our field and the people we serve. Definitely reach out to all the above.
and another tip we often recommend to people is that you bring in that personal connection. So you share if this is impacting your clients. You share in the letter that you're a constituent. You know, it's just harder for folks to ignore when they know, oh, this is impacting somebody that's in my district that could vote for me or not based on what decisions I make. Feel free to type any other questions you all might have. I did want to mention two things. One, really, if you want to connect with your NASW, researching that on the Find My Chapter page that I've been sharing throughout. And also remember that voting is a really simple and important way of using your voice and of advocating for what you believe in. And also that a lot of times your schools may have student social work associations. So I want to make sure I make a plug there. Those are great groups that are often connected to the NASW chapters. And so you can learn a lot about advocacy and the things going on in your local community through that.
Thank you for bringing that up, Nadir, because that is one thing that our social work department is doing at Whitewater. We send bus loads of our students to our advocacy day, and we also sometimes can help pay for events if like our annual conference if they want to attend that. So yes, reach out to your social work department in your program if you still are a student, because they should be able to help you get connected to your NASW events.
I'm not seeing a ton of questions. I just wanted to kind of, so I think since I'm not seeing any new questions come in, I'm just going to read the closing script. And the first, it starts with saying thank you to Kristi so much for participating and giving up your evening. I know you're just free all the time, so thank you so much. And I also wanted to mention that this is not offered for credit, but we will email the recording and the PowerPoint to you. The recording will also be made available in the next 2 to 3 weeks on the student event webpage. So where most of you probably signed up to join this, recording will be made available there. Oh, wait, I see a question as I was trying to make my closing, so I'm going to ask it. What are the steps to take to become a limited license? Oh, so that's a licensing question, and I would, and since it's about Wisconsin, I would have you reach out to myself, so I'll put my email there. Oh, a shout out to Governor Katie Hobbs of Arizona, who is a social worker.
Yay!
Has any other state had an MSW for governor? I don't know. Do you know?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because we need social workers to serve at all levels of government. So, we kind of talked earlier about thinking about running for your city council or your county board, things like that. But also think big. Don't limit yourself. Debbie Stabenow, who just retired, she was a U.S. senator in Michigan. She just retired. She was a lifelong social worker. Now I'm drawing a blank, but I know that we had a few more. Yeah, I mean, we need social workers at all levels of government. So don't limit yourself. Think big. Reach for the stars.
First, Tara, I want to say I saw that you wanted to ask one more legislative question, but I don't see it. And Dwayne says 3 of the 5 social workers are on Congress are retiring, so we definitely need folks to step up. Debbie is still there, though, through the end of the year. We love her in Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the question for you. Are there tips, resources, etc., for speaking with legislators in person? How can we best communicate to advance our cause, or is it just something that comes with practice? I mean, there definitely are tips and tricks, and a lot of times I would recommend reaching out to your chapter or groups that are aligned with the cause you're interested in, because they're going to know, like, oh, if you talk to that legislator, you're probably going to want to mention this, or that one's not the most friendly, just know this, and general overviews. Are there any other tips you might have?
Make sure you go to your advocacy day or your lead day with your chapter. Honestly, that's the best way to get your feet wet and practice, because when you go to meet with your legislators, you'll be going with everyone else who lives in your district. So you won't be alone unless you have a really small district. You won't be alone, and your chapter will not send you to the wolves. They'll have you all prepared and ready to go, and it's a great way to just talk to your legislator. They're a human being, and they really appreciate when we go to see them.
Yeah, and Tara, I wanted to mention a lot of groups will they'll have like a formal sheet that they want you to share with the legislator, and then they'll have the talking points that they want you to use, but not necessarily share, because sometimes we don't want to show everybody our game strategy, right? And then Rob says, oh, Rob Brown, a wonderful NASW Wisconsin member, says, we also need social workers as staffers. They do the bulk of the research for the legislator and offer a great perspective and internships.
Absolutely. We've had social work students and graduates serve as legislative staffers for some of our state representatives and state senators. So we definitely need not just legislatively, but staffers for different organizations and such to be social workers. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, the lobby toolkit. Dwayne, I was just about to call on you. Do you have any closing thoughts, Mr. Executive Director of Michigan?
Way to put me on the spot. Good thing I remember me on. I mean, really, It's be visible and to be collaborative. I mean, none of this work can be done in silos or by ourselves. And I really appreciate the comment from somebody from a small chapter. Alaska has one staff person, right? And so if you're from a state that doesn't have a lot of groups, please reach out to your executive director there and see, especially if you're interested and willing to help lead or co-lead. Some of the chapters in national also have groups that you can participate in that are cross chapters. So we recently formed a mindfulness work group that is national and actually international. We have people as far away as Australia hop on there because we can't do it together. And as we can share resources with each other all across the country, we want and need to be better at that. But we need all levels of social workers to be involved in macro spaces. And, we need people in management roles. When we think about why people are confused about what social workers do, what social workers get paid, do students get intern stipends, all of these things, if we have social workers in positions of power and at the tables, we can actually be a part of those solutions as opposed to other people making the decisions for us. So join all the tables, please. And if we don't have one, we'll build one with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dwayne.
Yeah, thank you. And as a reminder, the student series is offered on the third Thursday of the month at 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. See, I can say it, or 5 Central. And next month's topic is preparing for the 2024 election, what social work students can do. And then the month after that is overcoming imposter syndrome as a new social worker. So thank you so much. And don't forget to vote. Have a great rest of your night, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.